Welcome back, listeners, to another exciting episode of Scouting for Growth. Today, we are diving into a topic that is close to my heart: innovation, startups, and the magic that happens when you combine them with a forward-thinking industry leader. Now, in case you didn't know, this market is booming. Venture clienting is projected to grow exponentially, with corporate innovation investment estimated to exceed $150 billion globally just by the end of this year. And at the helm of this transformation is my guest today, the brilliant Joel Agard. Joel is not just a pioneer of innovation. He is what we would call a true venture clienting maestro. You can look at this number in two ways, right? If a corporate runs a venture client program collaborating with 50 startups annually, and the average contract value per startup is $500,000, this alone represents a $25 million annual market for that corporation. Then, if 10% of Fortune 500 companies adopt venture clienting programs and allocate an average, let's say, of $10 million annually to these initiatives, this would represent a $5 billion market annually. Now, reading a recent report on venture clienting from Gregor Grimy, well, there is 195 companies already working on these initiatives. So, alongside Zurich Insurance, indeed, companies like Bosch and BMW have deployed the model, and many have been scaling these programs, including adoption across industries such as automotive, insurance, and manufacturing. So, reverting back to Joel, the group head of innovation at Zurich Insurance. Joel has been driving bold, transformative startup collaborations across 40 more than that markets. His work has reshaped the way a global insurance giant works with startups, proving that innovation isn't just about flashy tech, it is about building real, meaningful partnerships that deliver results. From navigating the early days of Zurich Innovation Championship back in 2018, actually, to scaling the program during a global pandemic, and now leading the charge into the future, Joel brings passion, strategy, and a touch of risk-taking to every conversation. In fact, he's known for championing startups when it was really not that cool within our industry, and this journey is nothing short of inspiring. So, grab your notebooks, because today we'll uncover how Joel and his team turn Zurich into a global hub for innovation, the lessons learned along the way, and what it takes to stay ahead in the ever-changing world of insurance and technology. Joel, welcome to Scouting for Growth. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here with me today. Hi, Joel. Thank you so much for joining me on Scouting for Growth today.
Thank you, Sabine, and amazing to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And I look forward to diving into all the revolutionary things you have been doing. But let's start with this story, right? The foundation of the Zurich Innovation Championship, the Zurich Innovation Journey. You have been there since the start. And looking back at 2018, for me, what inspired you, right, to shape such a program and become a front runner when you think about startup corporate collaboration, partly at a time, if you remember, at a time where a lot of corporations were so scared to collaborate with startups?
Yeah, and rightly so, because for many industries, startups came into an industry and tried to disrupt these industries and have even disrupted certain industries. So I think it was quite an exciting time back then. And if you think about all the things that have happened since 2018, it's only six 7 years. But there's so much that has changed. The world has changed. And yeah, if I look back, I remember it was back in 2018, there was the football World Cup, right, which inspired us to piggyback on that concept of a competition to try and raise the awareness when it comes to corporate startup partnerships. Because back then, working with startups also in our industry wasn't the norm, right? We were working with big technology companies. We've built all these great technologies over the years, but working with startups wasn't the norm. So we asked ourselves, how could we show the art of the possible? How can we create this awareness that actually working with startups really can work? And this is when we invented the Zurich Innovation World Championship back then as part of the a global innovation program. And we created this to become one of the key cornerstones of our innovation strategy. So yeah, so we invented it with this in mind to create this gamification to also try to, in a decentralized world like Zurich, to also create a bit of competition between our Zurich business units, our Zurich countries. So every country selected a startup and then competed against other countries, so Zurich countries who have selected other startups. So with this, we created a bit of gamification. We had local heats, regional heats, and then the global finals here in Zurich. And yeah, that's how we triggered some of the first collaborations and partnerships with startups. And some of these are still alive today. So it was already a success. It triggered quite some exciting partnerships that are generating impact for us and the startup alike. Yeah, so then that's how it all started, and really quickly we realized this works, right? If you choose the right startups, if you match them with the right Zurich business units, this generates value, not just great PR, but real business value. Yeah, and this is how it all started off.
Wow, impressive. And I remember, I think it was in 2019, I was invited by the Zurich team to judge some of the startups in your London office. And, it was one day process as a judge, evaluating some of the solutions that wanted to work with the Zurich group. And, just to re-emphasize what you were saying, that you were trying to gamify, right? Really find the really great opportunities for Zurich to collaborate with ventures. I think during that time, we actually saw the evolution of InsurTech and what was, I would say, the remit of the possible. But I've always said to corporation, but also scale ups and startups, your best advantage in insurance is collaboration. So when you look at the Zurich Innovation Championship, Global Innovation Championship, what were the early challenges you faced actually to start building that muscle, right? To actually get to have the startup to trust you, that you are there to actually want to collaborate with them.
Yeah, but let me maybe start with the pros or the what really stood out and what we experienced as being quite an interesting benefit of working with startups. Because at the beginning it was we weren't sure what can they really contribute startups, and then really quickly we realized, yeah, we at Zurich, we bring our reputation, we bring our brand, we bring our insurance expertise, right? We are working in this industry as a company for 150 years, and then we realized actually startups bring in the agility, the speed. They are born in a digital world, right? So they bring us the digital native, the digital first kind of mindset, and the customer obsession that they have. Because at the end of the day, startups, even nowadays, even more than back then, honestly, need to show and prove this customer obsession. They need to be obsessed with customers. So back then, I think the first challenge it was to really bring across that this is not a David versus Goliath kind of setup. In this setup, David and Goliath join forces and work on the real big ticket items to solve and together solving for these. And I think this was a challenge at the beginning to bring across that both bring equal parts to the table. And this was a challenge proving that to both the startups, but also internally, in all honesty. Yeah, and then we realized that the pace that the startup is willing to go and used to go didn't really resonate always with the pace that Zurich wanted to go back then. So we had to align and create this safe environment where and also aligning a bit the expectations to make sure that this is really going in sync. That this we try to create this safe environment where in harmony we were able to really test fast and test in a safe environment where it's also okay to fail, right? And that was the second challenge, I guess. Failing early, failing fast, not always was that a part of our DNA, right? So I think failure, especially if you look at us big corporates, failing in a big corporate very often does not have a good image. I think we have proven that failing fast and failing cheap is something that we can achieve, and it's also beneficial for the startups. If you come to a conclusion, come to a decision rather fast, even if the conclusion is not to continue a collaboration. Nowadays, this is normal. It's part of our process. We have clear objectives and milestones, and we are quite ruthless when it comes to stopping innovation projects, which also includes startup projects, because we don't want to waste the startup's time and our internal stakeholders' time and also the money, right? And the third element, and sorry, I could go on forever, but I think it's been such an exciting journey. I could talk for hours on that. But I think one thing that I would like to point out as well is, and I'm guilty for that as well, right? I fell in love with cool technology so many times, and I still do. I can still consider myself a geek, but I think we had to learn that not all these shiny toys, these amazing technologies, if they don't really solve a problem for our customers or our internal stakeholders, it's it's not fit for purpose, at least not for us, because at the end of the day, it needs to solve a problem for our customers or our employees. If it doesn't solve a problem, it might be too early or just not a good fit for us. So falling in love with technology sometimes hurts, because then the breakup hurts even more. And I am guilty of that as well. I fell in love with cool technologies so many times and had to learn it the hard way, that sometimes stopping or quitting is just the right thing.
And you know that learning the art of failing fast is critical. And I think when I talk about the Zurich Innovation Championship with startups, I try to really explain to them it is a gift, you know, to know that you will be able to work with a big company, a Fortune 500 like Zurich, very fast, or that actually is not going to be a fit, because then no one is wasting resources. But then it's about transparency, building trust, and also making sure that both parties have a relationship based on credibility. So for me, you know, I remember during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? You guys double down on this innovation efforts. You didn't pause, you continued head on with the initiative. Can you share your thoughts behind that decision to say, you know what, we are going to double down on innovation regardless of what is happening around the globe?
Yeah, I remember very well. Because also my son was born right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and at the same time, we really asked ourselves, should we continue now that everybody works from home? We're not allowed to fly. We're not allowed to meet in meeting rooms. You can't. We are not allowed to jointly work on flip charts, etc. So does it really make sense to continue the Innovation Championship? And it was a discussion that we had even with our leadership. And yeah, pretty fast. It was clear that we shouldn't just continue, we should double down. Let's take this as an opportunity to to transform this into a fully virtual program. And instead of just doing a couple of projects here and there, let's increase the number of pilots and the number of problems we assess, the number of startups we talk to, because we realized very fast that the COVID pandemic very often has accelerated digital transformation. So there might be quite a lot of opportunities out there to accelerate some of our initiatives as well with the help of startups. And yeah, you're right. We doubled down. We increased the number of startups. We increased the number of pilots. We built even more muscles when it comes to validation of use cases. And yeah, towards the end of the pandemic, we also welcomed our new Chief Digital and Information Officer, Erickson Chan, to at Zurich. So he joined Zurich back then, and he supported the program from day one on, and even added resources and capabilities and also his own time to the program as well, which further accelerated the success as well. And
Yeah, and
what else? How else would you then keep track of the art of the possible, the unknown unknowns that this global pandemic offers than by working with startups, right? And that's
100%. 100%. And you're right. You're fortunate to have amazing digital strategy information leaders who actually believe in innovation as a key driver of transformation, digital transformation, and building digital first enterprises. And so what comes to mind, actually, Joel, is let's remember 2018, we are in 2025. For you, what are the key milestones that stood out, from looking at all those years, running one of the leading, now we can say, venture client engine in the world? What were the fun and memorable situation you found yourself into over the years?
Yeah, so I think if I look at it from a milestone perspective, I think the launch of the very first one was clearly a milestone because we wanted to explore the art of the possible, and we had the leadership on board from the day one, and I think that's quite crucial to have the most senior leadership on board to as ambassadors and as sponsors, as mentors from day on one. So learning that this resonates with our leadership was the first milestone because they were from the very first day on, they were supporting the program. I think then during COVID, when we added this accelerator moment, and I know that you remember because you were part of that journey back then. When we created this accelerator element, we added this accelerator element. I think that was a key milestone that we integrated into the program, a accelerator element which allowed us to time box in parallel all of these projects. So we really were very diligent in the way we ran these projects. We were really running these projects with our own central team together with the business team and the startup, and made it clear that we always start with the problem. So we made sure in this accelerator within 12 weeks that at the end of 12 weeks of this accelerator, we have proof points, real evidence on the desirability, feasibility, and viability, and as we call it, the adaptability or scalability of these use cases. And by building this muscle, building this proficiency within Zurich to time box these startup collaborations, and after 3 months, having irrefutable evidence on the table that something can A, work, or B, doesn't work, and then we just stop it, has really moved the needle for us.
Yeah, and as you said, I've been part of the acceleration engine, and so now we are talking about venture client engine, and so it would be really helpful for you to explain the theory behind, the venture client model. I was on email with Gregor Grimy, and we are going to have a little bit of a chat a little bit later during the month to really get into what the venture client model is for him. But tell us, what it is, what differentiates you as Zurich vis-a-vis other corporation in this world.
Well, so we have whenever, and I have many discussions with Gregor. I think we don't follow the classical venture client playbook. I think we have a bit of a special tweaked venture client model that we have built based on what we have achieved in the past. So, yeah, if you look back to 2018, when we started the program, as mentioned before, more as a competition, this had some gamification elements in there. These countries competing against other countries, these teams describing the problems and applying to win. I think that element is not truly reflected in the classical venture client model, where you really focus on the business problem, horizon one problem first, and then you scout for the very best solution out there. What we've implemented is, I think, a bit of a two-phase approach. So, or two-sided approach. I call it the venture clienting, and then we call it a bit of a radar, and I'll come to that in the past. So the classic venture client approach is again and that's the good thing is that innovation is part of our strategy and is embedded in our strategy. So we are really following the most strategic priorities we have as a group. In a decentralized world like Zurich, you then also, of course, have regional and local flavors of the strategy and local strategic priorities as well. So we always start with the most senior stakeholders in the region or in the Zurich countries and try to understand what are their strategic priorities. Our team has built the muscle over time to understand what can be solved by a startup and what is maybe more a strategy project, is more an internal technology or digital project where we already have built or want to build our own capabilities. So we carve out the opportunities that we believe are best solvable with startups. And these then we follow a classical venture client approach where we create long lists, short lists, and then we have discussions with startups, and then we find the very, very best startup out there for Zurich to solve for that specific problem. But then again, there are some unknown unknowns where that we still want to understand what the art of the possible looks like. So we want to keep our ears to the ground to understand what's coming. And that's where we are piggybacking on the classical Zurich Innovation Championship concept, where we have a call to action. We do we have these startup discussions, and we are very much embedded in the ecosystem to also keep track of it. So I think while we use venture clienting more in Horizon One, so the classical core insurance topics, I think the old co-creation approach that we had still helps us to also stay ahead of the curve when it comes to later horizons as well. And I think this harmony between explore and exploit, how to use Alex Osterwalder's words, I think to have these running in harmony, I think is our secret sauce. And we don't have a corporate venture capital arm. So everything we do will end up in a venture client kind of relationship anyway, unless we, of course, decide to invest in more strategic targets, but that's not in a typical CVC setup.
Yeah, I think it's very important to unpack some of the items you highlighted. So when we start looking at venture client model adoption, what I call an adoption lab or adoption competency, it's all about commercialization, right? Your goal is at the end of the day to find this alignment, joint alignment within the corporation and the startup to build something greater and better into the future. And the advantage of working for Zurich, I think, a venture is often I tell them is you don't just work in one business unit, right? You do not just work with Joel and Anthony in Zurich. You actually have the opportunity to potentially touch 200 countries within the Zurich group. Second, I think it's about progression. We started in 2018 and we talked about Alex Solston Water, right? Explore and explode, a framework where I did train under Alex. So I know all the frameworks, how to build the invincible company. And the key thing here is the framework. Desirability, feasibility, viability. It's about us really understanding and being able to use the techniques as we breathe, right? And the only way for us to use this as we breathe, understand what is an operating model, what is a business model, is getting it down. And you have done that for many years. So it's embedded in the culture now across many countries. And lastly, now the evolution is, when you start looking at where your model is going, it's going to be about, I guess, helping business unit industrialize and democratize the way they do things. But now they know how innovation works and why innovation is so important for them to actually build a business which is differentiated vis-a-vis anybody else. So that is part of my belief as to why I'm passionate about this corporate startup engagement, because I don't think a corporation can do everything. And the beauty is some of those solutions are there as well. And I believe you probably agree with me based on your background as well, Joel.
Yes, yes, I do. And you mentioned something quite important, right? And not everything needs to be solved by startups, right? We
Yeah.
have also nowadays with the AI excitement all over the place. I think in our case, we have built quite some great enablers, quite some great technologies. We have hired very, very smart people that have built amazing technologies that we're leveraging and adopting and scaling. But there's still ways to complement what we have already built with the help of startups. And I think having the understanding of the gaps that you need to and want to solve, the problems you want to solve for or can't solve for currently is quite crucial, right? Because again, we would waste our time and the startup's time as well, because we know that there's a lot of opportunity costs involved for a startup to work with a big corporation. So the better we are able to articulate and validate our problems and prioritize these based on the potential impact, and then scouting for the very best startups to fill that gap, the more the better we are and the more projects we can run, right? And I think, yeah, that's quite crucial.
Yeah. So now it is important to understand is that Zurich can now run 25 to 30 initiatives per year, right? Compared to before, right? When maybe we would run 10, 12 initiatives per year. So now you are able to scale this. So what does scaling means for Joel and for Zurich?
Yeah, as mentioned, I think we have built these muscles to do made much more with the same or even less resources and investment needed, because we are better and laser sharp in the projects we run. So we make sure that they are strategic and not just pet projects. We make sure that they are backed and backed by senior leadership, and we understand who is the buying center around the problem, who can then also make things happen. And we also make sure that we have clear success criteria in place to then run that. I think that's if these three things are given, then I think that's a good foundation. But you need different additional elements to make this really successful. Of course, you need capacity to run 30 or even more projects. In fact, it's even more in parallel. So that's also the reason why, besides my team and our digital R&D team that is co-leading this initiative for us, we have very, very smart innovation people in each of the countries and territories where we operate. So these are our brains and muscles in the business units that work closely with the local stakeholders and the startups to make sure that these pilots are validated in a timely manner. And then you need to create this governance around that allows to, as I mentioned, test fast, test and validate in a structured way, and also have a clear drumbeat, a clear milestones to then report back. And I think the governance, and of course the governance needs to be there. It needs to be done in a secure way, in a compliant way. That is important. At the end of the day, we are a large insurance company and we want to comply with all the regulations. So we need to make sure that we also educate and bring some of the startups that might not be there yet up to speed to meet our standards and our requirements in a fast way. And that's something that startups actually like, because we can help them to get enterprise or even insurance ready in no time, because we have the right people involved, we have the right people at hand that are dedicated to make things happen. Their job is to make sure that this is done in a compliant way, and this is and in a very fast and agile way. And we've built these teams over time. We have a very agile legal department, for example, who is really excited to make things happen and to support us in getting these things and these pilots over the line, just to give you one example. And yes, it needs capacity to just run these projects, which is something that excites me, and I think is quite unique to compared to other programs I have worked with or for in the past, which is our entrepreneur in residence concept. Right? At the end of the day, you need the best in class technology. You need to have the decision makers lined up. You need to have the best teams, being it from startups or at the business units, but you also need capacity to run 30, 35 projects year over year. So this entrepreneur in residence concept is quite unique from my humble point of view. We identify the most talented individuals in the businesses. We educate them on the Innovation 101. We make sure that they understand our toolbox, and we then assign them, these talents, to run these projects as entrepreneurs in residence, so as mini project owners, so to say. With this, we not only add capacity and bring in this talent mindset, we also make sure that we democratize these new ways of working, because these individuals, after these projects, they go back to the business units not only inspired but also equipped with all these new experiences, with the new network in the backpack and the startup mindset, and this helped us to really infuse this new way of working across the business in all the 200 countries where we operate.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, as you said, you need those amazing entrepreneurs to make a difference and to actually be also invigorated, because talent gap is a massive issue in our industry, and you have actually find that fine line around really exciting talent about the power of insurance and how innovation plays within that ecosystem as well. So looking at, we've looked at the project ongoing. Let's look at the alumni, right? Because you have, what, 1,800 alumni within the portfolio. How do you work with them? How you keep on building credibility with them? I had a fantastic discussion recently with the team at Sixfold, and Alex also talking about his amazing experience with the Zurich Innovation Championship.
That's good to hear. And Alex is a fantastic entrepreneur, or serial entrepreneur even, who, yeah, it was very inspiring and still is very inspiring to be working with him on an almost daily basis. Yeah. So we have these alumni, as you call them, and some of them, they work with us in one business unit, and they jointly teamed up with one Zurich country, and they're delivering a service, a product, a technology to the business or to Zurich locally. And there are some where we were able to really accelerate not only their growth, but also our growth. What do I mean by that, right? So we take a startup, we validate that it can solve a problem in one market. So my team is also involved in then taking the output of these pilots and then making sure it's not just adopted in the country where they started the collaboration, but we help then the startup to scale globally. In some of the cases, we help the startups to grow to 8, 9, 10 different countries with Zurich, really touching customers in each and every country where we operate, right? And I know for example, Miss Moneypenny Technologies or Loyjoy, a smaller German startup that started with us in Germany, and we're now bringing them from Australia to Italy, all the way to Brazil. And that's just inspiring to see how we can not only help a startup scale, but we can scale together. So very often, what we also do, we take a startup as an enabler. So we build Zurich Zurich functionalities around it. We make sure that these startups can scale by using our APIs, for example. They use our cloud environments. We do the first and second level support for our businesses when it comes to purchasing these SaaS solutions from the startups via our central team. So I think we were able to really also become over the years much more proficient when it comes to scaling these startup solutions. And yeah, I think that has also helped build this great credibility that we have by now in the startup industry, I believe.
Yeah, and I have to say, for any scale up startup listening to this discussion with Joel, I've been within the Zurich ecosystem for a while. So I've gone through procurement, I've gone through legal, and I have to say, this is probably one of the most enjoyable experiences. Not always that enjoyable with procurement teams and a legal team within insurance companies, but actually, I've experienced it. Zurich is making it super easy for smaller businesses. So let's go into the future, Joel. Vision, opportunity, and without spilling the beans, right? I do not want any future strategic plans. But where do you think is the biggest opportunity for us in insurance today? Where should we focus our intention if we were going to want to bring something of value to the Zurich Group?
Well, I guess nowadays it's needless to say, and I won't even start with telling you that AI is also at the future of insurance and it will disrupt insurance. I think that's a no-brainer, but let's come to that maybe a bit later. The way I see it, I typically distinguish between clear business opportunities, strategic business opportunities that I believe we can start exploring together with startups, and tech trends that I believe we need to be really closely connected to the startup ecosystem to keep our ears to the ground. When it comes to business opportunities that I believe will have quite an impact on our industry in the short to midterm, I would say everything around protection is super important because it really closing this protection gap is something that I believe we should all aim for in our industry and even beyond. If you look at it more on a short-term basis, I think from an opportunity point of view, I see topics like gig economy, open insurance being super exciting opportunities really around the corner, already here, right? And I know many other industry players in our industry are looking into this as well. But then there are other topics more on the second or third horizon that are intellectually very stimulating and super exciting. Yeah, I told you before, I consider myself a bit of a geek. So topics like autonomous cars, longevity are things that excite me a lot, and I think these are spaces where startups already do have quite an impact on these industries, which is obvious, and these then will also have an impact on insurance. And I think we need to keep ahead of the curve in that part as well. If you
Yeah.
look from a technology perspective, just
Yeah,
to
yeah.
elaborate a bit on the tech side of things, I believe there's a lot of hype around AI, Gen AI, LLMs, and most recently agentic AI, and in the mid to long term also on quantum. On agentic AI, this is something, as you know, we are quite excited about. We just yesterday launched our global call to action where we invite startups, engineers, AI corporations, tech companies to really co-create with us in a type of a hackathon kind of format what the future of insurance might look like when it comes to agentic AI. And we just started a call to action yesterday, and it's so inspiring and so exciting to see what's already coming in. And I can't wait to get my hands dirty as well on these agentic use cases, being it in claims, in underwriting, in marketing, or even in other parts of our value chain or our operations like finance. So that's something that I think will have quite an impact on us in the financial service industry and even in other industries, both blue and white collar industries alike.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about agentic AI, I experiment a lot, as you know, and I use my own agentic AI platform for research, and I use you.com, and I have access to their latest model, which is called ARI, which is a deep research model. But here, the thing for me, to be able to test those things, I've looked at sales and marketing because I don't have to actually put any client's data. I can test with synthetic data and actually teach myself how this technology works. And it's great to hear that actually you're not limited to claims and underwriting, because usually when I think about agentic AI and insurance, I would think, oh, probably you want to talk about underwriting, or maybe you want to talk about agent for legal or agent for claims, but I can hear it's all across the operating model. And so it's important that developer, startup, scale-ups, anybody actually building within that ecosystem called agents-based AI actually consider that competition, because it is a great way to actually also learn about our industry and how much work there is to do to actually make those agents work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned Alex and Sixfold. That's a great example where AI agents can work and coexist with human experts and this and build this workforce of the future where AI agents will work in collaboration with other agents or even with human expert workers. And that's super exciting to see what we are achieving together with Sixfold or Parloa being a second one, a German startup who just last week raised quite a significant funding round again. And yeah, these are voice bots, voice AI agents, which make the customer experience much better, but also the Zurich employees experience much better. And that's a great example where AI agents work in close collaboration with humans and with customers. So that's an amazing project that we've launched there, and yeah, already have massive scale when it comes to users that were able to collaborate with these AI agents.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you are saying it's about humanizing, right? The AI is collaborating and augmenting the human. So if we are going to engage with the Zurich group, for sure, there would be a situation where we may be talking to Jenna, the chatbot, who would be naming herself as such. But the minute we want to actually talk to a human, we can as well. Now, let's talk about the future of relationship. As you know, we are fortunate to have amazing VCs in our life, where we can knock on the door and try to find out where they are going to put their money, so that we know where to also push our bets in the years to come. How do you actually integrate VCs as part of your model? Because, as you said, you don't really invest in startup, but you actually collaborate with venture capital who have amazing startups on their balance sheets.
Yeah, and I just come from a call with a very large venture capital company, and they just confirmed again that we have built quite a good credibility in the VC space as well, because we can help startups not only to get credibility in the insurance industry by adding our logo into their customer or their pitch decks, right? That's one nice element to it. But once a startup is able not only to work and pilot something with us, but to scale something with us, it has quite a label because we are renowned for having proven that we can make startups enterprise ready. In many cases, we have opened new markets for very many startups out there that wanted to scale into other markets and territories. And And we are also renowned to be really working only with the best of the best. So I think if a startup has the Zurich approved stamp on it, or Zurich Innovation Championship stamp even, I think the VC has quite a good proof that the startup is enterprise ready, because it can work with us, and it can maybe even help them validate certain investment thesis in some of the cases.
Yeah, I know that, because often when we think about B2B startups, and we are in the B2B space, startup wanting to work with a corporation, it's about demonstrating that the solution is going to work commercially. So it's going to be able to scale across different departments, different business units. And when we start thinking about that venture, then wanting to receive funding from a VC, having the badge of honor from a Fortune 500 is always helpful, because the investor can see that the company has gone through compliance, procurement, legal, all those information security, and understand the privacy requirements in a highly regulated industry. And so that makes it easier to make a choice around investment. What advice would you give to the startup and scale up wanting to collaborate with you? What would be your call to action now, Joel?
Oh, yeah, and I have many scars on my body of corporate startup collaborations, and I often see myself as a bit the ambassador with two hats. Sometimes I'm the Zurich ambassador in the startup scene, and sometimes I'm the startup ambassador in the Zurich ecosystem. And we are a very large company, as you know, and very decentralized in the way we are set up. So very often I am really a startup. I even come across as a bit of a startup business developer. But at the end of the day, if I would have three advices, I would say make sure as a startup that you understand as soon as possible what the real problem, the root cause of the problem is that the corporate wants to solve for. The faster you understand the problem, the more likely it is that you will succeed. Don't try to just land pilots, right? At the end of the day, try to land pilots where there is a clear definition of the problem the business wants to solve. And that would be my second recommendation. Make sure you understand your internal buying center. Who are the ambassadors? Who are the sponsors? Who are the mentors? Who are the decision makers who sit on the budget? And what are their objectives? That would be the second one. And the third one, and I know I mentioned it before, don't get too excited about your technology. I know we very often you have built amazing tech. At the end of the day, if the tech doesn't solve a problem, it will not really help the corporate, especially in a not so R&D heavy industry like insurance. It is at the end of the day all about the customer. So don't fall in love with the technology. Fall in love with what the technology can do for the customer, or the customer of your customer in our case. So think backwards from the customer and then try to articulate your technology into an opportunity, and then you will succeed.
Yeah. Think backward, but always the customer first. So, Joel, my last question is, if people want to engage with you, with your team, with what can happen if they engage with the venture client engine that is being built within the Zurich Innovation Championship, where should they go? What should they do?
I'll either reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest way. I'm quite active there, both in reading and sometimes also publishing. And then we also have a website, zurich.com/ZIZ, where you will find all the information about our alumni, about our programs, about our call to actions, etc. And that's really your first go-to place, I would say, is the website, but also feel free to follow and add me on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. And I love the recent zebra campaign. I thought,
Do you know why we have a zebra as why we have chosen the zebra as a mascot that
yeah,
articulates our values that we have as a program? So the zebra for us stands, unlike unicorns, which are important, that I get super excited about all these great unicorn and founder stories. A zebra is a bit of a different breed. A zebra is a herd animal. It's a very sustainable, for me, it stands for sustainability, for collaboration, for a healthy growth. And this is the breed of startups we are searching for when we scout for startups. So since we are, as I mentioned, not a corporate venture capital arm, but we are a venture client unit, we want to search for these startups that want to collaborate, that don't want to compete at any cost or disrupt our industry from scratch. We want to search for the startups that can help us fill the gaps. And that's for us, that's why we have chosen Zeke the zebra as our mascot, and that's why it's very prominent all over the place.
I love Zeke the zebra, and I've seen it was all around Zurich recently. Beautiful blue, right? Blue colored, a beautiful zebra. How
Yes,
did you do that? And well, I see Zeke the zebra when I come and see you in Zurich soon.
yes, they're all over the place. But yeah, in Zurich, they're blue and white, not black and white, because hey, these are the colors of our company, but also the colors of our city, the city of Zurich, which also is very much blue and white.
Wonderful. Joel, thank you so much for joining me on Scouting for Growth and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Sabine. Yes, see you soon. I'm looking forward.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.